All right. Welcome everybody. Holy cow, it's been a long time since I've done this. Um, kind of been on a little hiatus here, just trying to get accustomed to a lot of other different things. Um, but man, am I glad being back, and we're gonna be continuing on. I know I'm gonna be doing a little bit of catch up with what we have missed. So just know we're gonna be uh, gathering everything that I can to go over here. Now, I did want to be able to let you guys know that I am changing this up a little bit. Not to make it inconsistent, but just mainly because trying to cover myself so that way I can get a lot bigger and a lot more traction. I don't want to be streaming the movies one because it's like super long, and there's been a lot of moments that there's not a lot of audio going through other than the movie, so I felt like that wasn't really great content. And two, you gotta be making sure we're looking out for the rights, and I don't have any rights over the movies other than where I'm telling you where I'm watching them. And so the companies themselves, like Netflix or HBO Max, any X amount of locations, have worked their hardest to get rights and things to be able to stream them and view them. So I don't want to kind of get into that legality part of it. So I kind of decided, you know what, I am gonna steer away from that, and we're just gonna start talking about the movie, what was good about it, what we felt like was something that we could say like, yeah, that's what made the movie good, what didn't, and kind of give it the perspective, things that we liked that came out of the movie, different sections, different things. So that's where it is. But how's everybody been? It's been pretty hectic for me. I uh, had to get acquainted in the advancement of my profession, so it just brought in a lot of different things that I had to kind of get acquainted to, even in the afternoon hours. Getting kiddos to different locations, so a lot of things just came through. But I did have time to see Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Have anybody of you guys seen it? Do you guys like it? Was it really fun? I'm gonna be 100% honest. I know a lot of people are like not loving Marvel right now, mainly because come Endgame, man, we had 10 years of amazing content, videos that help build characters, and film movies that help build characters to then see how they all connected together, and so on and so forth. And Phase 4 for me has been it's been interesting, but I've always had the question, how is this all going to connect, right? And I know a lot of people, when they realized it wasn't connecting, were kind of just out of the loop of it. And so just understand, just like any sports teams, after a lot of the great players have retired, and a lot of them are now starting with new team members and stuff like that. Just know that they're going through a little bit of a rough patch. I hope they get to a point where now we can kind of understand it. Ant-Man and the Wasp had a lot of a great connection to at least Loki, which I really liked about that, because Loki did have a great aspect of the multiverse, which should have been the one things that all the other ones should have done, like um, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness had some things there, but yet we're not seeing how this connects to everybody, other than Spider-Man: No Way Home. How we kind of saw how that kind of went through. So there's a couple things that they just have little ifs and offs about these things. However, this one kind of pulls it around to let us know that there's going to be someone that's going to be affecting a lot more different versions or different aspects. And so I'm just hoping that Phase 5, now that it's kicked off, will be a lot better. But we're not here for that. So I'm sorry if you're like, shut up about Marvel. Let's get into Chapter 2, right? All right. So Chapter 2, I'm going to be honest, this was really great. I know a lot of people were riffing off it. We got to understand one thing: adaptations from books to movies is always going to be difficult, for the fact that books have to be very descriptive, provide a lot further detail or backstory to help the reader understand what's going on in the story. If that doesn't happen, then the reader's going to be very confused in what's going to actually happen or what's going on, right? Movies, we can kind of tell it a little bit better, right? Now it's more visual, and so you're going to be able to kind of add a little bit more into that. And so I know a lot of people always talk about like how the difference between the book and the movie is, and I know that it had a lot of different adaptations between the first one and to the new one, but I feel like this one has stuck very well to what the story is. There was some ridiculous parts. I'm going to be 100% honest with just how they defeated him, and we'll get into that. But let's just hit it off the bat. All right. One of the things that was pretty crazy about this version that we didn't see in the 1990 version was the way Pennywise came back, and this is one that I wanted to kind of focus on, not to focus on just the negativity part of that comes into it, but just the big difference of it. So if you guys remember 1990, when we watched it, we watched not Ben, sorry, Mike, who stayed in Derry. We watched him kind of join the cops to figure out that it was back, and we realized it came back because it took another child and left the photo of Georgie, which kind of reiterated to him like, oh, he's back, right? The book and the way they did it in this adaptation was like almost close to spot on, but man, was it crazy still. Was it super crazy? To anybody that's going through just being bullied for your sexuality, it's I'm not one to say like it's your choice or anything like that, but like this is just really brutal, right? We shouldn't bully anybody, and again, this was in the book, so blame the writer or the author who created the book. But anyway, we deal with a gay couple who are enjoying carnival, and then they end up having issues with homophobic bullies who kind of reminded me of Eddie Bauer, right? Like, I guess Eddie Bauer is gone, right? We saw him kind of die in the last movie, or at least fall. And these other people just kind of took over, I guess, or just still became bullies and anti, you know, everything, right? If it's not their way, it's something different. So one of the things that just really was crazy was that they ended up picking the fight. They ended up getting beat up, and they beat like they just jumped this couple really bad, and then tossed one of them over the bridge. So the other one, who I guess if I remember was a Derry local, but they were gonna move out and live I don't know where, ended up going to find his boyfriend, and that's when he sees Pennywise, who has the boyfriend, and then gets like eaten. And I remember in the book, it talks about like he's telling the cops like that, like he was just there, and he like this clown, and they just made him look crazy. But I love how this came back because Mike instantly knew, oh shoot, he's back. And so now we're looking at 27 years later that that he's back, and he's back even like with a vengeance. So it's crazy how it is. Now the cool part about this is that we are now looking at the age of everybody having a cell phone. So with Mike having to call them, it didn't seem that difficult. He just had to locate their numbers if he had them, but it was a lot more easier to do. I feel like in the 1990 version, Mike just had to be like super lucky to catch them because he was calling them on their home phone, office, like he just had to be playing by ear that hopefully he gets them on the other line, right? Luckily here, Mike's able to just call them on their cell phone, and guess what? Who's gonna pick up other than the owner of the cell phone, right? And it ends up being his buddy, so it's really good. And I don't know if it was like something economic or if just Mike felt like he had to stay there because of his family, but everybody else left but Mike. And we never reiterated that. I think in the 1990 version, he did say, but I feel like it was on that one. It was more like economic, but in this one, I think he kind of describes that he was staying for his like uncle, like not uncle, his like grandfather, and he just stayed there, right? So he remembered everything very clearly, and so now he knew this is it, this is the time, and so he starts calling everybody. So now we get to see like all the adult versions that everybody has become, right? So you see how James McAvoy takes Bill, and how he's a screenwriter and trying to create a movie. And again, like I've described in like the 1990 version, and most of the books that Stephen King creates, it's always a writer in the book, like or a character that's a writer, an author, who is just always stuck in their work, not stuck in like all they're doing is working, but mainly stuck with a mental block, and they're trying to figure out how to get through it and how to create the right story. And I feel like he creates these stories as he's creating this, right? So whatever he does, like how his books turn out, it's his personal life. He's always stuck trying to figure out what's the next thing he's gonna write, and then with that, he creates a character, and then creates a scenario, and so on and so forth. So we have Bill, who's always been like the essence of Stephen King, the writer, who's trying to figure out what to do, kind of beat his stutter, and now he gets the call, and now he has to remember, and it's hard for everybody who left. It's hard for them to remember, and I think it's just like kind of normal, right? When we talk about like getting away from our traumatic experiences, or stepping away from a location that had a lot of trauma, what you try to do is just kind of block that, and it's not like I leave and then all of a sudden I think to myself, I'm gonna block it. I'm not gonna think about it. Subconsciously, our mind just takes that all away, right? We're in a new space. We're feeling a lot safe. So that's just kind of what happens. And which with all the other characters, that's exactly what happened until Mike called them and then had them kind of jerk a little bit their memory of what happened and what they promised. And so we ended up with the kids promising that if he were to return, they're going to come back and defeat him again, right? And so he goes off calling everybody, and I love to see how everybody kind of worked through their trauma, right? The ways that they kind of adapted and things that they kind of ended up, right? We get Eddie, who ends up marrying someone close to like almost his mother, right? Someone who is very, very protective, overbearing kind of a thing, right? Before he gets into an accident, we see Beverly, who ends up dating someone who is very abusive, very machismo, or what do you call it? Very controlling, and just like the father was, right? And then you see like Richie, who uses his trauma and all that stuff to create comedy. And like one of the things that I think came out of this was a lot of people said that they loved how Bill Hader, who plays Richie, or it did good, but they felt like he was too jokey, right? Like always throwing jokes and jokes and jokes and jokes and jokes, which I thought was very odd that people would say that when you realize that there's a lot of people that always throw jokes constant times, and they only do that because the only way for them to mend through the trauma, mend through whatever really hit them is to make jokes, and that kind of livens up the mood and takes away the fact that they're afraid. And I feel like everybody giving that kind of the bad rap. I think it's just that they need to understand that everybody has a different way to cope with trauma, and I think that was a phenomenal way to see that instead of saying, "Holy cow, that this is I'm afraid and I don't want to do this and I'm out," and he would say that most of the times, but other times it's like taking a jab at someone or trying to liven up the mood so that way the fear that everyone's feeling or the fear or the uncertainty of that situation is leveled out. So I kind of liked how he brought that because, in all honesty, I've seen that in my personal life. I've seen that around with friends, family, anybody who's gone through like traumatic stuff, who's always funny and always trying to go there is because they're trying to liven the mood to make sure that you're not feeling as unsafe as they have felt or as you're feeling at the moment. So I really enjoyed the fact that he still kept up that great the persona of always staying funny. Even when times got hard, he still stayed serious at the times where he's like, I'm done, I don't want to do this. But he still brought in the jokes. So now everybody's gonna come back, except we all know Stan doesn't, right? And I kind of like the way this really worked out because he got the call, and of course, from the 1990 version, we know he got the call, remembered, and he doesn't go. But I like that in this one, we get a reason why he didn't go. We get the main like a closure, as in the reason why he didn't go, and he sent letters to everybody, which I thought was really cool for him to kind of do. It's sucky that he did kill himself. I'm not saying that was a need, a sacrifice that was needed, but I feel like it was really good that he was able to provide them some comfort after everything had occurred, right? A reasoning into why he wasn't going to make it. And if you guys recall, in the first chapter, right, chapter 1, I feel like he went through a lot worse than most of everybody else because he got separated twice and got taken from that like flute lady. And so I feel like he had a lot more reason to be afraid. Everyone else had their own reasons. Like we learned in this movie that everybody when they split up in that one moment before they came back again, like before it took Beverly when she was a kid, they all had experiences where he still kind of picked on them, mainly because he knew he had separated the gang, and so he could. So we get to see that, and I thought it was pretty interesting of how everybody had different experiences in that, and how we got to see it. So it's cool that the kid actors were still able to gather that information, or like not gather, but like act out what occurred at that moment, right? So now we got to get them all back, right? And so we see everybody coming back, which is really great. I love how Beverly finally stood up for herself and made a great difference. I love how Ben turned out to be like this hot shot, and I don't think he was even like a playboy. He was just a hot shot architect or whatever, and he had like a huge Ace mansion, and he just did out himself. He was still alone, right? I don't think he had any girlfriend or anything, but he still did well for himself and turned out to be a really handsome guy, right? Everything that all chubby people aspire is to lose all the weight when you're a kid and come back to being a handsome person, like especially in your high school reunions, right? um, but anyway, so now at least you get everybody saying, yeah, we'll come back, right? We'll make it to the area because of the promise, but not a lot of them remember the promise. Again, trauma blocking everything out. So now we're getting everybody to come back, and the cool part about everybody coming back is that now we get to see exactly what it's doing. And now, before it was just, or Pennywise the clown was only just gathering like sufficient kids to eat, for his, its hibernation. I'm not gonna say his or anything because we don't know exactly what the species is. But it's hibernation, right? It would eat enough and then sleep. 27 years later, we'll wake up, continue, follow the price, go back again, right? But this time he was more pissed off because I don't think he was able to eat enough before they beat him up, and so he was out for vengeance. Most of the scenes that he came in was like he was pissed. And again, Bill Skarsgård did a phenomenal job bringing out the fear and everything, and it was really interesting how he made it a lot scarier than how the first one was. So like even the first one, it was super scary. Now he made it even scarier. I don't know how you can top that, but he did really good at it. So so back at it again. We get the famous scene where they're all in the restaurant, and I enjoy this scene in the restaurant rather than the one in the 1990 version because it's just they have too much fun. I don't know. In the 1990 version, it was very cheesy. Again, it was a film that was set to run on a TV series, right? Like a TV special. So they had to edit a lot of things out. They couldn't display on this one. This one they had a lot of free range. So I felt like it was really good when they brought in the fear aspect, the reality that they were in, which brought everybody to be like, we're out, right? But then we get Mike over here going, I don't know, flipping crazy. Not crazy in a way, but like he always knew the history of what had happened, and he had the list of all the events, right? So he was able to gather what occurred, but I feel like it was kind of messed up of drugging his friend to kind of show him what happened, right? Like, hey, buddy, I need your help. I need you to convince everybody. Here, have a tea. By the way, I spiked it, and now you're gonna go through this hallucination of exactly what happened, right? Right. I feel like that wasn't cool. If you need my help, just tell me, right? Like, hey, buddy, if you've researched something, give me the stuff, right? Just give me the facts, but don't drug me so I then am convinced that it happened, right? Because bullcrap. They're not gonna say, yeah, of course I'm gonna be like, why the heck did you drug me? Like, what the hell? Like, you could have just told me, hey, by the way, this is what happened with the people. Like, I just felt like that part was pretty messed up with Mike. But I think he was very desperate. I don't know. Um, but I'd be pissed. Anyway, at least Bill was fine with it. Bill's like, hey, by the way, okay, I'll help. I'll help you convince everybody. Like, and so we kind of realize that we get the greatest story of it because I remember in the first one they talk about how the Indians. I apologize. How the Native Americans at the area, and they were, I think the Shood, they didn't get anywhere near Derry. They like stayed outside, and if you think about it, you're like, oh, maybe they had their own reservations. Like, oh, no. They knew exactly this thing, and they had the story, which Bill hallucinates, which is the actual story, that in an asteroid came. Out of it came out like these three lights, and of those three lights, it turned into whatever they feared, which we know is whatever Pennywise could, or it, or whatever the creature was, could image for them to do. And so whatever they feared, it just turned into it, and so on. So we're looking at the three lights, right? And we kind of talked about, no, I don't think we did talk about it, but the name of those lights are the dead lights, and those are the lights that what's her name, Beverly saw when she was taken in the first movie. So now we have this kind of like origin story of what it is and how supposedly there's a ritual that the Shoot made that could banish him. So anyway, he convinces Bill after drugging him to like say, "Hey, I got the ritual. I know what to do." Right. So now Bill has to go convince everybody that like, "Hey, we got to do this. We promised," and all that stuff. And I'm gonna be 100% honest. I think it would be so hard to keep this promise just because like all the trauma you went through. Like Bill's dad left, like not left, but Bill's dad moved everybody out for the fact that they couldn't stop remembering Georgie, right? And so like there's a lot of traumatic experience. So the fact that they're like their friends like, hey, it's been 27 years, you gotta stick to it. I think would be super hard to get anybody to be like, okay, I'll do this, especially now that they were. I don't know how old they were prior. They were like 12, 13, right? And so 27 years, we're looking like 30 to almost 40. So each of them had their own life. I think it would be really hard. However, he was able to convince everybody, kind of, to be able to uh, do the ritual. And in order to do the ritual, they needed to get artifacts from their past, which I think would be a lot harder, especially since it's been 27 years. So it was really good that they were able to find those artifacts. But we end up finding out different things, like how Beverly hid Ben's letter, or where she hid it, and how she was able to retrieve it with like the creepiest grandma lady, who then turned out to be whatever it wanted it to be. But I thought that was a really good scare on there on the books of being super scared in this movie. And then we see like Richie collects his game token, and we kind of end up seeing that he's playing for he's hiddenly playing for the other team per se. So we realize he actually had feelings for his friend Eddie, right? And so we kind of find out that, oh, hey, look, we have somebody who is gay. And I'm gonna be 100%. I read the book a long time ago, so I don't know if it's in the book, but if this somehow is just someone adding this to add whatever that somehow every kid always has this, I'm gonna be let's stop. I get it. You can be who you want to be, but not everybody has to be that, especially in movies. But anyway, kind of going off topic. Ben goes to school and finds, I don't know what thing that he had, but they each have to go to the location that they separated after the big fight. So the big fight happened, get everybody separated, and so they had to go through, and they go through again the same traumatic experience, remembering what happened, and then it also attacking them again. But they have to do this so that way they can go through this. Now, one part that kind of like really hit me good with like the freak out was when we flash into Eddie Bauer, which I thought was pretty crazy that he was alive, because he fell pretty far. Like bro should have been dead. The fact that he walked out of that was crazy. Yeah, I thought it was incredible that he survived that fall. But it was good that the cops finally like realized, like, hey, you killed your dad. And I think if you see the deleted scenes, he actually killed his other two friends in the car. So I bet like he got wrapped for it. But they instead of putting him into jail, he came out saying, crazy things. And so they're like, oh, this dude is crazy. He goes into a oh my gosh, I don't know, insane asylum, right? Into an asylum. And then his buddy shows up who died. And not just like the other buddy. It was like the one that had the fire. And I forgot his name. But, oh my gosh. He pops out of the bed. And that was a good, like, got me good. But it helped him escape, right? And then he was, of course, sent to kill the Losers Club, right? That's what he was sent to do. So off we go. Now everybody's kind of getting together. into the hotel room and like saying, "Okay, I gathered all my stuff. I don't think this is a good idea." Blah blah. We get Eddie Bauer stabbing Mike, like, or no, no, he didn't stab Mike. Sorry, he stabbed Eddie like in the cheek, which I thought was pretty crazy. So, in the 1990s version, I think he stabs Mike, and then Mike's in the hospital. And this one, he stabs Eddie, but luckily Eddie's able to like kind of like beat him, and then so now they got all their stuff. Uh, Now they have to go back again. I feel like this was pretty crazy because like I don't know like I don't know how they would have really like gotten the real courage to do it. I know they're adults, but there's a lot of things in our childhood that probably like freaks us out the most. That like as adults, I don't think we would want to face. I feel like they just did it because they're like, we're here already, right? Like, what else are we gonna do? Um, However, we find out again messed up by Mike. I think this is where I start losing my trust on Mike. And I don't know if you've had that before, but so he first drugs Bill to convince him to help his buddies, to convince everybody to find their artifacts so that way they can do the ritual. But then he takes out the most important part is that when the Chud, right, the Native Americans tried to do this ritual, they also failed and came out, killing whoever was there. Like it came out and did the same thing. So I feel like that would have been very important to provide that information because then, at least they could have made sure it was going to work or could have had like some backup, right? So there's that. Well, it didn't work, and I feel like from there it kind of just went a little downhill per se, um, because the way they defeated him was the crazy part. And before I go any further, we're gonna go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about the way they defeated him. I feel like it just there could have been a better way, and I don't. I just feel like it could have been a lot more heroic than how it ended up being. So, when we get back, we'll discuss that. And we're back. All right. Um. So we're gonna get to the nitty gritty of it, how they defeated him. All right. So there was a lot of good scares that we had building up to the part that when they realized that the ritual was gonna fail, or it actually did fail. All the parts I think led up really well. We had really good scares, and I thought it was just gonna be like, holy cow! How I felt like, okay, good, they're gonna defeat him, and then when it didn't occur, and they realized one, they were lied to, and now what do they do, right? Uh, I feel like, okay, this is where can they go from here? Um, Unfortunately, we had to lose um, Eddie, who ended up dying. We had to lose him for them to finally realize how to defeat him. And again, I liked everything coming up towards it. Like it was really good. I loved the backstory. I liked how everybody like had their own experiences when they separated. I love that part because in the first movie you don't see that. You just kind of see them separate, and then something happens with Beverly, and then now they all come back together, right? But we don't see what happened during that time, and I felt like it wouldn't have stopped, right? So the fact that we get that kind of back view is really good. However, once Eddie dies and they want to revenge him, they realize, okay, the only way to defeat him is to make him to believe to believe that he is to make him believe that he's weak, right? Like Like, and that's kind of what was in the book, if I remember, and what I've read is that he can only get hurt on whatever shape he is. That's his weakness. So like, for example, Richie hates or was always afraid of werewolves. If he were in the shape of a werewolf and you had something silver, that would damage him because that's the weakness of a werewolf. And so so on and so forth, right? Like whatever it would change into, whatever weakness that thing it was, it would be the weakness. It would be his or its weakness. But somehow they're like, well, you're this, you're that, and then they just kept like repeating, you're a clown, you're a clown, you're a clown, you're a clown, and then he just kind of like, and then they just ripped out his heart, and then just like, that was it. That was it. And I was like, oh, come on. Like, it gave no justice for Eddie to die. For them, they could have just like thought it before, like, again, having the second, the backup plan. Like, hey, by the way, if this ritual doesn't work, is there like a different way to defeat him? And they're like, maybe we should think about it. And then like kind of discuss like, oh yeah, by the way, if we make him believe that he is weak, like, then we'll win. Oh, perfect. Let's do that before anybody else dies. But they didn't think about that. So they're just like, oh no, Eddie died. And then it's like, oh wait, now we got to make him believe. So I feel like that death was kind of like like it sucked that he died. Like that, I think that was the worst death ever. I think Eddie was a really great character. But yeah, the way he died, then that was it. That was it. Like that's the whole movie. There's nothing more. I know a lot of people said in the book, like this first attempt doesn't work, and then they come back later. And I'm glad they just didn't do that because I would not be interested in seeing like 60 somewhat old people defeating it. Like it just would be ridiculous. They would have to bring out a lot of other things to then make it understandable. But anyway, I just feel like the way it ended wasn't. It was anticlimactic. Like you get all this horror even from the first movie, and you're like, man. And the way they ended, like the way they beat him in the first movie, was really good. Like that was the ending that we needed to get here, but it just ended up being so lame. But the movie was still great. I'm not gonna say that the movie was bad. However, that part could have been a little bit better. So I don't know how better you can get it, but it could have been better. And that's it. Like in all honesty, this movie was really good, and I would recommend anybody to watch it if you want to really watch it, like with me and not get too scared. Where, hit me up. But I'm just saying, when you're watching it with your buddies, especially here with your buddy Gio, I always make sure that I prepare you for jump scares. Like I said, there's some that got me too, but I make it easier to like not feel the scare. However, for this movie, I thought it did really well in ending and in providing at least the end of something, right? Ben and Beverly finally get together. Like she finally realizes that he was the one who wrote the note, even though she realized it at the end of the first one, but then still tried with Bill, which I thought was still messed up. But luckily later on, she finally realized, who really gave her the letter, and then we realized that, what was it? Richie really was in love with Eddie, like, and it was just sad. I think that part did really hit me. Like, I think other than being like in love with him, but they were really good friends. And to lose him, I think that was pretty sad. And then everybody else, and that's kind of where we get Stan's kind of like, the reason why I didn't come is because I wanted you guys to be strong, and I was going to be there spiritually, and yada yada yada, right? That's where we kind of get it, but it still ended up happy, and there wasn't going to be anything coming up again. So I thought it was pretty good to get a good ending for a chapter 1 and chapter 2. Again, I feel like they could have murdered him better. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really fun to see, and I loved all the actors that they had chosen. Made it really good for the adaptations from kid to adult. Kept the same, the same charisma and character building. So I thought it was really good. I would recommend it 100%. If you felt like there was parts that I missed that you're like, man, this part really wasn't good, just let me know. Hit me up and all my, on all my social media. Again, it's at Geos_thoughts, and we can kind of discuss just what I missed, what could have really made it sucky, or what you thought was really good about it. But other than that, we're going to keep going on. You guys enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you next week.